וכי נפשי es Hashem. Today the shiur will divide it to two parts. The first part, we complete this parak, this chapter, chapter 4, with the final words and the final explanation, the dinim, the halakhot of hatmana, which means insulating food with something that add temperature to the food. And then in Mitzvah Shem we'll go to the next chapter, chapter 5, and chapter 5 dealing with something that all you guys involved, which is the animal. What's exactly the halakhot with animals on Shabbat, which have a lot to do with Torah laws, since the Torah said it clearly that part of Shvitat Shabbat, Shvitat HaBe'ema, which means that the animal has to be in a state of resting, the same as the owner. Again, we begin in page 51, the Mishnah, top of the page. Lo kisahu mi be'od yom. Mishnah, 3 lines from the top of page 51. The Mishnah asks a question: what happened when a person did not cover the food, the pot, in advance before Shabbat? Which means the fear is that the food will not be warm enough to serve if he needs to serve it the next day or late in the evening. Lo yechasenu mishet echshach, which means a person is not allowed to do that when it's already Shabbat. Why? So the gzerah here is a decree that the rabbis made that if a person see that the food in a pot turned to be too cold, what is he going to do? You tell me. Imagine it's Friday and you take off the food from the pot, and it's a Friday after Shabbat, and you wrap it up, right? And then you realize that it's not hot enough. What are you going to do?
It's before Shabbat or after Shabbat?
After Shabbat. What people are going to do next?
Well, what they would try to do is put it back on the stove.
Excellent.
Yep.
And then if they do that, what it's involved?
It's cooking.
Isur bishul, the violation of cooking on Shabbat. That's, by the way, what we study in 34. Yes.
So why would we put it back if you want to violate the Sabbath if you put it back?
Excellent. So therefore, we said we put a fence, we put a decree. The rabbis put a decree, and they said that if you didn't do it before Shabbat, when Shabbat started, you cannot do it. You cannot do the insulating food when it's already Shabbat. However, kisahu v'nidgala mutar lechasoto. If you pull it out of the stove before Shabbat, wrap it with blanket before Shabbat, 3 blankets, warm blankets. All of a sudden you're back from the synagogue, and let's say it's like this Shabbatot that starts at like 4:30. You come home and you talk with your friends and everything, and it's 9 o'clock, and all of a sudden the wind came in and opened these blankets, right? So the question is, do you allow to wrap it up now when it's already dark?
As long as it was covered before, you can recover.
That's exactly what Tosfot said, yes. That basically you're allowed to wrap it. But Tosfot said that even he discovered it before Shabbat. Others said that it's only when Shabbat already started. Now, the next thing is, so why the Mishnah will need to tell us? So some of the rabbis said, it's like Beit Yosef said it, in Reish Nun Zayin, he said that what happened, sometimes you walk in your house on Friday, and you realize that the food is not hot enough, right? How come? You realize that the way that you wrap it with the blanket wasn't warm enough. For example, So the point is, you allow, now you're planning to use this food in the morning. So here the big to do is you allow to open and check the warmness of the food and then to wrap it back, as long as you started before Shabbat.
As long as it was wrapped before Shabbat.
Yes. But as I told you many times, at the end of the shiur I'll give the practical halakhot. Another din, ממלא את הקיטון ונותן לתחת הקר או תחת הכסת. On Shabbat, a person may fill a jug with cold water and place it beneath a pillow or a cushion, right? To prevent from getting warm, but you allow, it's not an issue of hatmana, because here what happened is, you do that for what purpose? To make it cold. So the only prohibition of hatmana, insulating food, apply when you want to observe the heat, as long as it's not get hotter. But if you need to make it colder, so it's fine. The Ramban, the Rashba, the Ritva, the Ran, all of them said that if you want to defrost it, right, it's not the issue, because you're not warming the food. GEMARA, Omar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, mutar להטמין את הצונן. He said it's okay, it's permitted to do a הטמנה, to insulate with the cold, meaning with cold food on Shabbat. The purpose of that is to keep it cold. And here we not have those concern of הטמנה and חימום. אמר רב יוסף מאי כמש מלן. Rav Yosef asked, what we learn from the Tanina. ממלא אדם קיטון ונותן תחת הקר או תחת הכסת. A person can fill up a jug with cold water and he basically put it under the pillow. Why? Because he wants to avoid getting it warm. So here you see like a different source without this source that we said here, that what Shmuel said. Amar le'Abaye tuva kamashmalan. What he learning here is something very important. It's chidush, it's a great chidush. The imi matnitin, if we want to learn this din from the Mishnah, hava mina haneimile davar she'en darko lehamtmin. So only apply by way that the Mishnah said, specifically cold water or something that is derivative from cold water, that usually people do not put them with the pillow, with the cushion, in order to warm them, because it's not going to warm. The wrapping up with the pillow not going to warm it. So therefore you can put hatmana, you can insulate those cold to preserve their coolness. Aval davar shedarko להטמין. But something that we get used to do hatmana, which is, for example, a tavshil, a cook food that you want to observe. Basically hatmana, you have to remember Rashi said here that hatmana, it's not adding the temperature, and if yes, it's very little. It's basically eating a cooked food. The whole idea is that as long as it's not cold, people like to eat it when it's warm. It doesn't need to be too warm, but it has to be warm for most of the people. But he said, lo. So you cannot, he thought that we cannot do hatmana in order to observe the cold temperature. Why? Because you may fear that the same way is going to do the opposite way, which is to put it, to insulate in the food in order to keep it warm. Kamash melan, so therefore Shmuel come and tell us a big chidush. What's the chidush he wants to say? That we never put a prohibition against cooling a product, even something that usually we do atmana for the purpose of making it hot, like insulating that food when it's hot. Amar Ravuna, Amar Rabbi, אסור להטמין את הצונן. Ravuna said the name of Rabbi. Rabbi is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He said it's prohibited to insulate cold food on Shabbat to keep it cold. Wait a second. That's the opposite of what we said, right? והתניא, Rabbi התיר להטמין את הצונן. We just said that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi allowed to do what?
Insulate cold.
Right. He permitted to put cold food and insulate it on Shabbat. So you see a contradiction between one braita to another braita to what he said. Lo kashya said it's not difficult. Why? Rabbi basically backed off. How come? Ha mikamei delishmei merabbi Ishmael berabbi Yossi veha levatar delishmei. In other words, that was before he heard this memra of Ravuna, name of Rabbi, that you cannot insulate cold food, and then when he said that it's allowed, it's after he heard that from Rabbi Ishmael Rabbi Yossi. Ki ha deyativ Rabbi ve'amar. It's a story that Rabbi come and sit and said, Asur le'atmin et hatzonen. You cannot prohibited to insulate cold food on Shabbat to keep it cold. So he said, Amar lefanav Rabbi Ishmael berabbi Yossi, Abba hitir le'atmin et hatzonen. He says, Dad, allowed to insulate cold food to keep it cold. Amar lo, Rabbi responded and he said, Kvar hora zaken. Which means Zaken is basically Zekana Chochma. It's a great scholar, great erudite scholar. He says, since Zaken, which applied to Rabbi Yossi, make Hora'ah, which means he made the halacha, I annul my opinion to his. In other words, I change my mind and I allow it. I defer to his ruling. So Rav Papa comment on that and he said, Amar Rav Papa, this is very important what we study now. Remember what we study now. Amar Rav Papa, Bo ur'e kama mechabevim ze et ze. Come and see and learn for our own life how respectful were the Tanaim one to another. Tanaim, for those who are not familiar, Tanaim is the rabbis that lived during the era of the Second Temple, between the first to the third sanctuary. The Talmudic, the Amoraim, is the 4th, 5th, and 6th century. So here, the Amoraim said over the previous generation, rabbis that lived a couple of 100 years earlier, that it's called Tanaim. And he said, come and see how respectful those rabbis to each other. How come? She'ilu Rabbi Yossi Kayam haya kafuf yoshev lifnei Rebbe. Since Rebbe is the president, is the Nasi, is the head. So if Rabbi Yossi was among the living, he will sit and, as Rashi said, and he bang himself, abide himself, subjugate himself, etc. Show some type of subordinating to Rabbi, and Rabbi Yossi never there to give halacha at the front of Rabbi, even he was a great, tremendous scholar. Yet, and how do we know that? By the way, Tosfot here, he said that Rav Yossi was greater than Rabbi, and he said that he have a different way of thinking. But back to our subject, the Rabbi Ishmael berabbi Yossi di memale Mekom Avotav Hava. That Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, he was great rabbi, the same as Rabbi Yossi. Vechafuf veyoshev lefanav. And he was like bind himself and subjugate himself to him. V'ka'amar kvar ora zaken. And he said, no, this already issue a ruling on this topic by the elderly person, so that he deferred to Rabbi Yossi's ruling. So it shows you that he basically tremendous respect to each other. So it shows you the way that people, especially giant scholar like that, respectful to each other. So the point is, just to clarify this, that agree to disagree, it's something that we go along in halacha, which means two rabbis can disagree over a subject, yet they are personally respectful to each other, even they disagree over some halacha matter. I know that two friends of mine, you have in Baltimore two great rabbanim, Rabbi Berger and Rabbi Heinemann, both the giant scholars. They disagree over the way that you're making the Eruv in Baltimore, right? Between the Tchum, that people in Yeshiva near Israel need to walk to Pikesville. So the question is how far you can go. Do you depend on the Eruv or not, and how you depend on Eruv? These are two different school of thoughts. Rav Heinemann is one way, Rav Berger is the other way, right? But the same with mezuzah, they have different opinion over a room within the room within the room, if each of them need a separate mezuzah or not. Right? Yet they are both friends and very respectful to each other, very very respectful, and they're students as well. So,
if you're in the same town, why is a problem with the distance? You're in the same.
Yes, but it's a good question. Over there, the issue is between the Pikesville and the Yeshiva, there is a bridge. And under that bridge is the Route 695.
Oh, okay.
And because you have the route, there is a concept we learned earlier on Shabbat of Shishim Ribo, and how many people you have in order to make it Reshut Arabim or Carmelit. So it's a two different school of thought for that bridge, for that certain property that basically in between the yeshiva and the Pikesville itself, the neighborhood that many observantly.
But there is a limit on how far you can walk on Shabbat. We learned that before.
Yes, but I'm not speaking about the limit.
Yeah,
yes.
No, I understand that, but you had a question. There is a limit on how far you can walk.
Yes, the 2,000 Amma, yes. Each way. Okay, Amar le Rav Nachman ledaru avdei. Rav Nachman said to his servant, Atmin li tzoneh. He said to his servant, Atmin, make hatmana with something that it's called on Shabbat. Ve'aiti li maya de'achim kfeila arama'a. So, and bring me water. The gentle cook heat it on the weekday, as the prohibition to eat food cooked by a non-Jew, here is speaking about arama, does not apply to water, because the whole idea of bishul nochrim not apply to water. Basically, the whole archaka, we explained many times, it was the issue of intermingling and marry out of faith, etc. So the rabbis put a prohibition of bishulei nochrim, but that's not applied to water. Shamar Rabbi Ami ve'ikpad. Rabbi Ami was unhappy with that, ve'ikpad. So he was like unhappy with that. He became angry. Amar Rav Yosef, ma'ita ma'ikpad. Rav Yosef asked why Rabbi Ami was unhappy, why he was angry. Ki ke Rabvatei Avid. He did the way that his Rabbi tell him to do. Chada kerav, v'chada ki Shmuel, because both of them, Rav and Shmuel, was the teacher of Rav Nachman. So now we explain. In regards to do insulating cold food on Shabbat, ki Shmuel, damar Rav Yudah amar Shmuel mutar latmin et hatzonen. So since Shmuel said that you're allowed to insulate in cold food to keep them cold, so he followed his teacher. Rav Nachman followed Shmuel. And the other one, in regards to non-Jews using water, right, on Shabbat, כרב דאמר רב שמואל ברב יצחק אמר רב, כל שהוא נאכל כמות שהוא חי, anything that you eat as a raw, which means you can eat it without cooking, אין בו משום בישולי נוכרים. So that's not considering part of בישולי נוכרים, or cooking by non-Jews. Even somehow they cook it. So therefore, water is not considering bishulei nochrim, because people can drink water without cooking it. So that's Eglei Tal in Melechet Ofeh. He elaborated on that. So the big question here is why Rav Ami was upset on Rav Nachman. So they responded and said, Vehu, meaning Rabbi Ami hold Savar Adam Chashuv Shane. He was angry that an important person like Rav Nachman is difficult, which means a VIP, a very important person, it's like Rav Nachman should be more strict. He should strengthen distance himself, because otherwise people will see his leniency and learn something like that for themselves. Or people will say that he is, light-minded or reckless or whatever it is, and people think that, and it's a basic derivative of the desecration of God's name. The Meiri said that the important person should be careful even with things that he allowed to sanctify himself, in order to avoid people who are not so smart or not so positive to follow that type of leading. Because if they see that he is lenient, they take leniency far away. Now we back to the Tosefta. We said that you can do insulating food in something that not add heat. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis stated, אף על פי שאמרו אין טומנים אפילו בדבר שאינו מוסיף אבל משחשיכה, even though they said that you're not supposed to insulate insulated food in something that it's not add to the temperature, even just wrapping it with blanket when it's already dark. Nevertheless, im bא להוסיף, if in Shabbat you see that it's wrapped with 2 blankets, and it's wrapped in 2 blankets before Shabbat, now what you're doing, you're just adding another blanket to the existing 2. So they said mosif. It's not an issue, you can do it. The Magid Mishna Hallchot Shabbat add to that, and he said, and that's basically Shulchan Aruch Reish Nun Zayin, he said, we speak here clearly and unequivocally to a food that was fully cooked before Shabbat, right? So therefore that wrapping, it's not any form of additional cooking, Tosefet Bishul, it's nothing. In addition, they said, Keitzad hu oseh, how should a person does that? Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he said, Notel et asdinim umaniach et agluf kerin, which means he takes those wool part that was cover the food, and he put a very heavy linen and wool blankets that observe more than the regular tiny sheets, right? In order for the cooked food to be warmer, and is not any form of prohibition. Or if the opposite way, if he wants that part to observe coolness, to be cooler, for example, he is afraid in a hot summer that the food will be destroy, will be basically ruined, thank you, because it overheats. Notel et agluf kerin umeniach et asdinim, which means he can replace what he put with lightened. So in other words, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel come and said that the person allowed not only to add more covering to the existing one, But also he allowed to do what? To replace
To remove the old one and replace it with something.
excellent, to remove the old one and replace the new one, because he hold that this type of insulating product is a continuation,
Right.
and it's permissible. It's like someone who takes some part from the stove and return it back. So so as we said earlier, it's like continuation. So but you have to remember that we're not speaking about situation that it's add the temperature and make it higher. Anyway, there is a lot of way of understanding that. You see the Rishonim, you see the Tosfot, etc. וכן, I wish to have more time. וכן היה רבן שמעון גמליאל אומר, so he gave another leniency in regard to הטמנה. לא אסרו, the חכמים, the sages, not forbade an הטמנה בשבת, אלא אותו מי חם, that hot water that was warm before Shabbat. אבל פינה ממי חם למי חם. But if he transferred the water from one part to another, mutar, you can do הטמנה with the second part. So now he elaborates and he said, Hashta akure kamei kirla artuche kamirtachla. Because he moved the water to another one, and basically he cooled the water by doing it. So are you concerned that he maybe heated them? For sure not. Because the whole prohibition of Atmana apply only if he found his part cold and he warmed it. So he said taman v'kisa. If he already insulated the food and he covered it, which means he insulated the pot and covered it with something that may move on Shabbat, בדבר הניתן בשבת, which means something that is not muktzeh. He put some other part at the top of that. In other words, the pot is open, the Meiri said, and he put a cover that it's not muktzeh. So he said, או תמן בדבר שאינו ניטל בשבת, or he insulated in something that may not move on Shabbat because it's like muktzeh, it's set aside. וכיסה, and he cover בדבר הניטל בשבת, with something that may be move on Shabbat, that it's not muktzeh. So in both situations, because the cover of the pot is with something that it's not muktzeh, הרי זה נוטל ומחזיר, he can take the pot and return it. Meaning he can go ahead and remove the cover, even he put around something that it's muktzeh, he can remove the pot from that location. Why? Because the minute he open the pot and hold it and something that it's even that it's a muktzeh, it's not considering an issue. Now we said taman v'kisa, but if we put insulating the pot and cover בדבר שאינו ניטל בשבת, with something that it's not be moved on Shabbat, או שתמן בדבר הניטל בשבת וכיסה בדבר שאינו ניטל בשבת, or if he insulated in some things that may be moved on Shabbat and cover it with something that not may move on Shabbat, so it means that the cover it's muktzeh and you cannot move it. אם היה מגולה מקצתו, if it's open partially, even is not fully wrapped with something muktzeh, נוטל ומחזיר, he may remove the pot and cover it with fold that it's on, right? Because he can move the pot on the side, and the cover that it's muktzeh will fall by himself. Ve'im lav, but if the pot was not partially exposed, but the cover of the muktzeh it's on the top of all, the entire pot, and you cannot take the pot without moving the muktzeh, אינו נוטל ומחזיר. return the page 51b. So he said that since he may not remove the pot and return it to its place. Why? So Rashi said because that it's basically basis לדבר האסור, which means the muktzeh, the base, the foundation is for something that is forbidden. So therefore you cannot move it. Tosfot and other disagree, and they say that if you do that, it's basically become a muktzeh. So they say that here you have a situation that you cannot move the muktzeh from the pot. But the Meiri hold that all of that apply when it's not fully covered. But if it's covered partially, then it's different. That's the reason why we hold that way. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Neoret shel pishtan daka arei kezevel. He said the chaff of the fine flax is like
Manure.
Manure, yes. That because what's the problem? It's add more at a temperature, and you cannot do atmana, insulating it even before Shabbat, and that's applied here as well. מניחים מיחם על גבי מיחם וגדרה על גבי גדרה. You're allowed to do what? To put a one pot copper at the top of the other, and the same apply to kdeira in order to observe the difference is Rashi said that one is a copper and one is the pot. So kdeira pot.
Yeah, they differentiate. One's a kettle, the other's a pot.
Yeah, kettle and pot. So one observe heat higher than the other.
Yep.
And he said, however, ugdera al gabe mecham umecham al gabe gdera, you can do it. But basically it's not hatmana. Vetach al pia bevatzek. So he put at the place on that a batzek, which is again basically we're not allowed to do lisha of a dough on Shabbat. But here we speak about something that was made before Shabbat, so you can go and put it at the top. So you take this ready-made dough and you put it at the top. While you're doing, you basically observe the temperature. You're not adding more, and it's not considering atmana. Velo bishvil sheyechamu, and the reason that you allowed to put a cold utensil at the top of the warm one, it's not because that they should warm, ela bishvil shiyu mishumarim. It's only to observe the heat. Shulchan Aruch Reish Nun-chet elaborate, but we'll go there later. וכשם שאין טומנים את החמים, כך אין טומנים את הצונן. The same way that you don't put the chamim, the hot, and Rashi said in order to avoid the heating it, and basically it's disagree with what Shmuel said earlier that you can do atmana in the tzonen, in a cold. Rabbi hetir להתמין את הצונן. Rabbi allowed to put the cold food and insulating it. ואין מרזקין לא את השלג ולא את הברד בשבת בשביל שיזובו מימיו. You take an ice or you take a snow and you crush it so the water will flow. So that's not on Shabbat. Why? It's what we call no lad, because you create something new. It's creation, a new entity. And it's basically, it's like melacha, because Rashi said it's like he creating this water. Not everyone agree with Rashi. Others say that it's like schitat perot, like squeezing fruits, that it's dash. It's like you're taking a fruits and you squeeze it and you make it liquid, make it juice.
Yeah.
אבל נותן לתוך הכוס או לתוך הקערה ואינו חושש. You can take the snow pieces, right, or the ice inside the cup, for example, cup of wine, all right, and you're not concerned about melting it and creating a new, because you don't basically defrosted the ice in your hand, but it happened by itself. That's what Rashi said.
So you're using the ice to cool the liquid. The intent
Yeah.
is not to defrost the ice. The intent is to cool the liquid. So, and it defrosts as a result of that.
Maybe, but there's another way to look at that. The whole idea of molid is you creating it by squeezing it, but here by putting it with, for example, wine, it happened by itself.
But you're making a change though.
But
Something is
the
changing.
intent is not to change the ice. The intent is to just cool the wine.
Well, what Ramban and Rashba and Ran said, what you said, not like Rashi, they hold because you didn't do it by itself, only toward other liquid such as wine, so therefore it's allowed. That's the Megan Avram and Shinkaf said like that. So basically it's a two different view. One is Rashi and one is the others that said it as you guys said. Hadran alach b'met omnim. The Torah said in book of Deuteronomy, I'm just giving some word of introduction for the fifth parak. So in the book of Dvarim, the Torah said when it's come to Shabbat that the person is obligated not only for himself, that he needs to have shvitat Shabbat, like resting on Shabbat, but he's obligated also toward his animal. The Torah said, "Ata ubincha ubitecha veshorcha v'chamurcha v'chol behemtecha," your ox, your donkey, and all your animal. And then it's basically a repetition of what we said earlier in the book of Shemot, in the book of Exodus. So we derive from that one of the prohibition, it's called mechamer, which means that you lead your animal and you basically make the animal doing work for you. So for example, if you put something before the animal and the animal does it by itself, so again it's a violation. So that's not apply, for example, if your animal eating for something that is attached to the ground by themselves. But because basically it can look like you are cutting, like kotzer, right? But in kotzer it's one of the 39 violation. But the idea is we are obligated to give the animal the rest. Now, therefore, rest meaning if the animal by themselves go out and gaze, so they do it, it's part of their joy. You leave them alone, they do it by themselves. Okay, so since we are obligated that our animals will rest on Shabbat, so one of the melachot we learn in the first chapter is hotza'ah, which means carry from Reshut HaYachid, from the private domain to a public domain, and vice versa, or carrying some entities, some items within the 4 cubits in the public domain. So therefore, a person not allowed to his animal to go in public on Shabbat while the animals carry a loaded of things. If it's Carmel, it is rabbinic, but now, not everything is considering a loading on animals. There are something that it's, for example, if it's something that made as a, especially nowadays, to make the animals looks nice, right? Or you wrap the animal with a special clothing, right? It's not considering a loading them and the animal allow. Now, so it's a big machloket if that's considering masoy or not masoy, but the whole idea is involved here also it's mar'ita ayin, how people will observe it. So again, the Torah forbids a owner of animals to let her doing work that's forbidden on Shabbat. So therefore a person should not let his animal to carry loaded or unloaded from public domain to private domain and vice versa, or even to carry within the public domain above the 4 cubits. Now masoi, something that the animals carry, it's not necessarily carrying loading the animal with something. It can be, for example, something that animals have it naturally. For example, the horse. What did the horse have? Horse that you ride on a horse.
Oh, you mean like a saddle?
The saddle. So saddle, it's considering a masoi. Even you don't load it. There are horses that have it all the times. Okay? So, but something that serves the animals, it's not considered that. It's like tachshit. Tachshit is something that makes the animal looks good, or etc. That beautify the animals. But not everyone agree with that. It's a big controversy how you hold something that beautify the animals. So now the Mishnah said, "Babeh be'ema yotz'a, ubameh ena yotz'a." The question is, with what may animal go out into the public domain on Shabbat, and with what they may not go out. So they give an example. Yotze hagamal be'afsar, v'na'aka bechatam, v'luvdekim befur merabia, v'sus beshir. Which means the camel can go out Shabbat with afsar. Afsar, it's like Iranian, it's like halter.
A halter, yeah.
Yes. And nekar may go out with hatam. And luvdekim. Luvdekim, it's like the Greek word, Libyan. With pumaria, it's the halter that tied the horse, and it's a filling through. And v'chol ba'alei ashir, and all these different animals that typically have a chain around their necks when they go out to public domain. So he said, for example, the dogs that they're hunting dogs, and the small animals, right? He said, v'yotzim beshir v'nimshachim beshir. So they go out with a chain on Shabbat and may be pulled by the chain. So later we explain the GEMARA what it means. Now, umazin alehen, if this chain contracted ritual impurity, one may sprinkle waters of purification on them and immerse them in their place, vetovlan bimkoman, and he placed the animals and they need not first to be removed. So again, here they're speaking about meichatat, that you can do a sprinkling even that it's still on the animal's neck. Mai na'aka bechatam. So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of naka and chatam? We didn't explain it when we read the Mishnah. So what's the difference between the camel and this one? The Gemara said, Amar Rabba bar Chana, na'akta chivrei bizmama defarzela. So that's applied to a Libyan donkey with iron halter. That those type of animals have the tendency to run away, and it's very hard to hold them. So it's not enough that you hold them with one halter. You need something that's made out of iron, and it's like something that you put around the nose, and that's the way you can hold them. Otherwise, they run away from you. Veluvdakim bepur maya, and the other one, luvdakim bepur maya maravuna chamara luva befagei befarzela. That's applied to a Libyan donkey with a hold with a hold iron holder.
Iron bit, yeah.
Yes. So either in the nose ring or with iron halter. Before I said iron halter, I meant the nose ring. So now is the story. Levi shadar zuzei levei choza lemizman lechamar aluva. Levi sent money to Bnei Chozar to produce for himself a Libyan donkey. It's like because they have a reputation of very high quality. Tzaru shadru leisha'are. So they returned the money with an addition of barley. Lemeimar, they want to hint what? The nigre de chamara sare. They want to hint that they say that straight of a donkey depend on the barley that it eats. So if one provide with donkey with better feed, its performance will be good, as good as that of the Libyan donkey. So in other words, they want to imply that he should have his own donkey just to feed them properly. אמר רב יהודה אמר שמואל מחליפים לפני רבי של זו בזו מהו. So what happened if someone switch from גמל בחתם ענקה באפסר, so can you allow them to go אפסר? It's not enough to hold naka, and khatam it's too much for gamal, for camel. So the question is how you do if someone switch. You know, sometimes you let someone who's not professional to hold the animals, and they mix in. So someone put something on a camel that it's way too much, and on a naka on the other one it's way too little. So can they go out to a public domain? So the GEMARA explained and it said, Naka be'afsar lo tiba elach, if he did it with white female camel going out to the beach, should not be a dilemma for you. Why? Kevan de lo mintre bei, since he's not sufficiently secure by a bit, so masoyu, it's regarded as a burden with the animals, so the animals not go out. Kiti ba'elach, the problem is gamal b'chatan mai. What's the problem? Because if camel going out to public with a nose ring, kevan de sagelei be'afsar, masoyu, or dilma netiruta yeter alo amrin al masoyu. So either you said that since it's a bit alone suffice to secure the camel, and the nose ring is considering a burden, so it's a burden, it's a masoi, it's an additional burden, and you're not supposed to go in public, right? Or the opposite, because you overburden the animal, and you do excessive security, so it's not considering a burden, and since it's good to observe the animals, so it's allowed to go in public. אמר לפניו רבי ישמעאל רבי יוסי, כך אמר רבא. 4 בהמות יוצאות באפסר. He said, that's what my father said. 4 animals may go out with a bee. הסוס, the horse, והפרד, and the mule, והגמל, and the camel, והחמור, and the donkey. That 4, למאותי מאי, what does this come to exclude? Lav lemeute gamal b'chatam, it's not coming to exclude a camel going out with a nose ring. So Rabbi Yossi meant that the camel may go out only with a bit. So they said la, it's no. The list come to exclude lema'ute na'aka be'afsar, to exclude a white female camel that going out with a bit. So you cannot say that it's a masoi. So they said b'matnita tana, we learn in the Braita, luvdekim vegamal yotzim be'afsar. In other words, the luvdekim, a Libyan donkey and camel, can go out with a bit. So now we said ketanai. That's a machloket tanaim. It's a dispute among the tanaim. אין חיה יוצאה בסוגר. So one Tana say that non-domestical animal may not go out with a collar on their neck. חנניה אומר יוצאה בסוגר ובכל דבר המשתמר. חנניה said it may go out with a collar with anything that secure it. במה יסקינן? What is bright eye dealing here? אילמה בחיה גדולה, if you talk about large animal like a bear, מסגלי סוכר. Is that sufficient? Does the collar suffice to hold them? No. So you cannot tell me that Hananya said that you're allowed to go with that on Shabbat. Ve'ela b'chaya ktana, you have to say that dealing with small, non-domestical animal. So milo sagela sukar. So doesn't the collar suffice for it? Why does the first Tana hold that animal may not go out with it? So you have to say el alav chatulika benayu. We're talking about what? A cat. What? So in a cat there is a controversy if you allow to a small rope suffice for a cat or not. Tana kama savar kevan de sagele b'matnita de alma masoyu. The first Tana hold that since the collar is considering a burden which the cat may not go out into a public domain, so it's masoy, and you cannot let him go to public. וחנניה סבר כל נטירות היתר לא אומרים המסויו. And Hananya hold that device that provide excessive security, we do not say that it's a burden, and therefore you're allowed to go on Shabbat. Amar Rav Huna bar Chia Amar Shmuel Halacha kechananya. He said halacha according to Hananya that the device provide excessive security is not considering a burden, and later we see that he disagree. But anyway, story Levi Braid Rav Huna bar Chia veRabba bar Rav Huna havu ka'az lebeorcha. They ride a donkey and they go together on a road. Kadmei chamara de Levi la chamara de Rav Huna. One donkey, you know, sometimes when you have several animals, one compete with another. So one donkey, the donkey of Levi, went first before the other donkey. Chalash da'ateh de Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba bar Rav Huna was a giant scholar, more than Levi, so he was unhappy. He's like offended, because he was a greater Torah scholar, and he thought that Levi went first, that he wanted to assert that he considered himself a greater scholar. And it's inappropriate. There is a GEMARA that said that if two people go together, the one who is in advance in learning should go first. So when you have two, the one who less advanced should give him a respect and let him first. So it's, for example, walk in the door, walk in the room, or two donkeys go one before the other, so the one who's higher in scholarship should go first, etc. Amar Levi said in his heart, Eima le milta, ki heiche, I should say something to him, so that the itotav da'ateh, that he will, come down, he will not feel that I did something, So 52. אמר לי חמור שעסקיו רעים, כגון זה, מהו לצאת בפומיה בשבת? If I have a donkey that is undisciplined, who's conducted in a wicked way, like this donkey that I'm riding, what's the ruling in regards to having it go out with a halter on Shabbat? So usually to hold a donkey you need something small to hold it, right? It's a bit suffice for a halter. But here it's like extra. Amar le Rabba bar Rav Huna said Levi, ki hache amar avuch mishmei de Shmuel. That was your father said in the name of Shmuel. Halacha kechananya, which means the halacha of Hananya, that who said that device that provide excessive security is not considering a burden, and you're allowed to go on Shabbat. Which means that donkey like that is undisciplined, you have an issue to take it at Shabbat versus a regular donkey. Kisahu v'nidgala. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 257. It is permitted to replace the cover on a pot of cooked food that one insulated on Shabbat Eve if it become uncovered on Shabbat. That's the Mishnah said. However, if it become uncovered on Shabbat Eve prior to Shabbat, one may not cover it on Shabbat. How about cold? Mutar le'atmin et hatzonen. That's the Rambam, Halakhot Shabbat, chapter 4. It is permitted to insulate a pot of cold food on Shabbat in a substance that does not add heat to preserve the temperature of the food or to temper its chill. Even an important person is permitted to do this. However, it's prohibited to insert the cold pot in a substance that adds heat even before Shabbat. This ruling is according with the statement of Rav and the custom of Rav Nachman. So that's a part of the Hatmana. כל שהוא נאכל כמות שהוא חי, אין בו בישול בישולי גויים, which means that's a Rambam, הלכות מאכלת האסורות, chapter 17, that food that can be eaten raw, so it's not subject to prohibition of food cooked by a non-Jew. That's the statement we said on the behalf of Rav. Another one, im ba leosif mosif. On Shabbat, it is permitted to add hatmana, insulating into food that had already been insulated before Shabbat, and the Rambam permit to replace insulating but not to add it. How about hatmona bekli sheni? If when food was cooked in one pot and transferred to another pot, it is permitted to insulate the second pot even on Shabbat itself, as long as the insulating does not add heat. That's what Rabban Shimon Gamliel said. Taman v'chisa bedavar anital. If one cover insulated food with material that may be moved on Shabbat, he may remove the cover, hold the pot, and remove it from the insulation. If one covered the pot with material that may not be moved on Shabbat, when the pot is partially exposed, he may remove it and later restore it to its place. When the pot is covered with material that will not fall off, or if it was insulated in a substance that may be moved on Shabbat, he may remove the pot from insulation and its side and shake off the cover. That's Magen Avram. If it was surrounded on top and on its sides by materials that may not be moved, one may not remove the pot from the insulation. Now, how about putting a pot one at the top of the other? So he said, on Shabbat Eve, this is the Rambam Halakhot Shabbat chapter 4, is permitted Shabbat Eve to put a pot filled with cold food atop with the pot filled with hot food, even if the food in the upper vessel is raw and will be cooked by the heat of the lower part. This ruling is according to the Rif's accepting variant reading of the Braita, which maintain that placing an arn upon arn, it is permitted in all cases. Also on Shabbat, it is permitted to place a pot filled with food which is cooked and which is so hot that the hand spontaneously recoils from it. A pot of food in it to keep the food in the upper part hot. In addition, one may seal the lower part with dough that was kneaded before Shabbat. How about crushed snow? We said one may not crush snow or hail on Shabbat to produce water. However, one is permitted to place them in a cup of water or wine so that they may melt on their own. Some authority, like the Rambam in Hilchot Shabbat chapter 21, permit actively crushing the snow or hail with one hand into a cup of liquid. But many say that it has to come in the indirect manner, which is just placing it with the wine, for example. Bameh be'ema yotz'ah. This is the Rambam Hilchot Shabbat chapter 20. An animal may go out on Shabbat with the reins or muscle required to secure it. However, if the muscle provide excessive security or opposite, insufficient security, it is considering a burden, and the animal may not go out with it. In disputes between Rav and Shmuel, the halacha is according to the opinion of Rav that the matter of a ritual law. That's the way the Amoraim interpret his position. Now, tomorrow we're going to elaborate in Mitzvah Shem with specific animals, because as you know, there are so many, not only in the size but in the behavior, in the manners. So therefore we're going to elaborate with different animals and different use of animals on Shabbat, and what exactly considering menucha and what's considering something that you're not allowed to do.
Hashem